Hello and welcome to the London United Filmmaker Podcast. My name's Greg Randolph. Today I have a very good friend on, Sam Tabasi. Sam is part of the band Glassio, which has toured internationally. He's also directed many of his own music videos and recent recordings. He's also done composition for two of my own films, Swimming and Different Faces.
I've been questioning whether or not the degree in which getting the degree in pressing record, that was what I did in college. What are you studying? Oh, I'm learning how to press record.
Yeah.
It actually, big red button. It's actually functioned here in the real life, in the real world. So are we rolling or?
Sam, how would you like me to introduce yourself? Sam.
Well, I mean, if it's, I've been getting lunch at Leon as of late on my lunch breaks, and I don't know if this is indicative of an upcoming breakdown, but when I order my food, I change my name on the order to just McMurphy. I've done Mr. Moo. I did Moron once.
I got Drag yesterday at Starbucks from Greg.
So did?
Drag might be my alter ego, my incoming alter ego.
Drag Randolph.
Just Drag.
Oh, just you're such a drag, Greg. I mean,
I like that though. Kind of sounds like kind of Mad Max. Me drag.
I mean, when I put my name down as Moron, I was just patiently awaiting how they would pronounce that, and they maintained their professionalism, and they said Moron, like almost as if the name came from the south of France. Moron. Oh, it was Morin. They said Morin, and I was like, actually, that's quite a beautiful name. This is my son Morin.
That is nice. That is
nice. Wow. So
you put a little inflection on there. Yeah. That makes things just much.
You're an esteemed moron. You've spent 25 years being a moron, and then you're a moron with good taste, and then you become moron.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Anyway.
Well, how about this? Let me. I'll give a hack at your last name.
Okay.
Sam Rattershat.
You're kidding. No. It's a tough one. I just go by Sam R.
Yeah.
But frankly, I've reverted to a name that my grandfather was born with, called Tabasi, which he changed for whatever reasons, I'm unsure. But it was the name of a town that he came from in Iran, and and it was so our family last name was going to be Tabasi up until some point in which he invented the name Radsaresht. And I just think Sam Tabasi. I think the mispronunciation of my last name has been an allegory for, I think, how many people I feel like have misunderstood me. So I'm reclaiming Tabasi as a means to sort of simplify the rest of my life,
Definitely.
So I go by Sam Tabasi now. Just I think it's not legal, but it's one day I think it will be.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I want to kind of, for the audience, create kind of like a world where we're understanding where like we met and like the work we've done together. First off, I guess I want to welcome you to the London United Filmmaker Podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Up until now, we've been talking primarily with just filmmakers, but you kind of have that and more added to your resume with just such a prolific career in music, with Glassio, and with the music you're doing now, with Tabasi and some of the ambient scores you've been making, as well as most recently a lot of compositions kind of within the London Film School realm, but it seems to be kind of just growing from there. So you've got a lot on your plate. You're also now working at, remind me the name, it's Banquet Records.
I'm working at Banquet Records just as a sales associate and like working on the events. It's like a record store and events agency in Kingston in Southwest London. We do like just a number of events in the area. We have a club called Prism that we host. We had Phineas, Billie Eilish's brother, play there the other day. So we have a lot of touring acts that come in, and then sometimes we do in-store performances. But we're a record shop as well. It was once a part of the Beggars Banquet group, and then our new owners took over in 2004, I believe. So yeah, it's a really cool spot, and it's a wonderful opportunity to sort of be aware, I think, of what's coming out musically. I used to sort of shy away from new releases for reasons that are quite complicated, I think. Maybe even just sort of, I've always been afraid of letting my peers' or like just sort of my contemporaries' music sort of impact the decisions I make in my own lane as a musician. I've always been very like aware of trying to stick to my own thing.
Yeah.
And not get unintentionally swayed by like trends that other people sort of push out. That's like a tangent of a conversation, but someone once said, like, don't ever listen to your contemporaries if you want to be inspired by something. You know, you have the whole arsenal of the history of music at your fingertips. You can pick and pluck from any decade you want. Like, you're going to end up being more original based off of the formula of what eras of music you actually like.
Yeah.
Because you're just going to collage it together and it's going to be your own thing. If you end up just sort of listening to everything that everyone's doing at the same time, you're just going to end up unintentionally, subconsciously making stuff that feels like, I don't know if there's much truth behind that, because I think a lot of people are plucking from different areas and there's a lot of individuality right now. But I think there are some tropes in pop that I think, you know, I pick up on a little bit more now that I have this sort of like, okay, I'm listening to every album that comes out every week because of just working there. So
that's cool.
Yeah,
I totally get what you mean. Yeah, I think there's this. I think there's a prevailing thing where it's like, oh, I have to keep on the beat, and I think you've always been good at, because we've known each other quite a long time now. You know, from living in New York, working on music there, working on music videos. You know, our collaboration has primarily been, you know, with me filming, and then you kind of having made the music, and kind of together we're kept conceptualizing a lot of the different stuff. So we've worked on tons of stuff.
We go back a long way.
Yeah. It's been great, man. You've been a great support as a friend and like a coworker or just a kind of collaborator on like so many different projects. And, you know, we've been able to promote that stuff, and I think get an audience excited about it. And life kind of takes you in your separate ways sometimes, but it's really great that you're now here in London. We're able to work on, you've helped me with the compositions for two films that I wrote and directed, Swimming and Different Faces, and I'm just incredibly grateful for your time there. And yeah, it was really nice actually. Because we're doing the screening on Friday, nice to see it up on the screen, just do some tests. So didn't get the whole thing. I'll go on Thursday to get a total test done before we screen on Friday. But so nice to be able to watch this stuff on the big screen now. So nice that Swimming just got into Earl's Court International Film Festival, you know. So
I'm so excited for that.
We'll be able to go, you know, and that'll be just, who knows, you know, you meet people there, you have good conversations. So that's what's so great about these festivals, is that it just opens up the door for just a ton more work to come down the line. So,
well, I'm grateful that you very kindly asked me to come on board and compose music for those. I think they're both really beautifully shot, beautiful stories. And your filmmaking has just gone to a whole other level. I think when we first met, you had just come out of working at NBC, perhaps. And you were
floating around.
you were very, but like what I was gravitated towards was this sort of openness and receptiveness to newness that came from you, which I think, frankly, is a little refreshing in New York. I think, you know, you meet a lot of people in New York and here too, I think, and I've heard that it's even worse here in London, but you meet a lot of people in New York that aren't as open to sort of new idea, like, or just like, because they've been in the circuit for a while, they have a sort of jaded perspective. So I think there was I like to always try to maintain a naivety, even if it's not, but I think I'll always be more naive now than I will be tomorrow. But like a childlike wonder to entering any project is so important. And I felt, not to make it like sound like we were children, but I felt like I had...
We kind of were.
Hey! I felt like I met another fellow child, you know, like on the streets in New York. So
that's well said.
And we did 2 music videos, I think.
We did.
Our first project, and you documented a very interesting tour. Which I think I just, you know, for complicated reasons, the footage has to remain where it is. But, you know, it was so cool working with you, man. And like, you know, it was really awesome to like then on the flip side score something of yours So thank you for having me on for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that documentary, man, it would be great to have it see the light of day some way. I know it's on a hard drive somewhere, probably in Boston right now. So maybe one day. But it's fine. I'm glad we have.
It involves me being pulled over by a police officer.
Well, that was me.
And almost
driving like a maniac through the eastern
Not to get controversial on here, but like the police, for context, we were in a car driving upstate New York, and I think there was a swivel.
It was a nice day. It was very nice. We had just stopped for lunch, I think. Yeah,
and there was like, I think, Greg, you were looking for a charger, and I said, "No, I'll get it, Greg." And I was in the passenger seat, and then you insisted on getting it. Not to put any blame on anyone here, but then the cops noticed the car was moving oddly, and we got pulled over. But dude, I never seen two police officers on either side of the car.
Yeah.
Like they came up like velociraptors, and I thought, this is it. Like we're getting shot. Like
I know. Yeah.
I know. Remember, he looked at me, and my chest was pumping through my shirt.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We got through it. It was a bit. I don't know why. I don't know what I was on, but it was very fun.
Oh no, we were just tired. Man. And then the best part was you had the GoPro at the front of the car that was filming.
Yeah.
And one of the officers took me out to the front of the car.
We have that.
And it's in there. So if there's footage of me literally in front of a GoPro trying to convince a police officer that I'm not a threat. Perfect content for YouTube, Greg.
We gotta make that at some point. Maybe we could like somehow connect it with interviews. But that's I think to bring everything back, because we've got we've got stories to tell.
Let's be focused.
But I think just for the sake of this kind of introductory podcast for what we're kind of conceptualizing like early on here, I think I'd like to start with your past. And usually I ask the question, what got you into filmmaking? And I'll leave that as it is, but also maybe what got you into music as well, since that is kind of, I think, your prevailing passion and kind of what you're focused on. You know, I know you're a huge film lover and filmmaker as well, and we can talk about those projects, I think, as we kind of move through things. But I'd love to speak about kind of what your memories are. Yeah, you talked about kind of a childlike wonder in New York. Tell me about what it was like, living in London, right?
Yeah.
You were.
Well, I grew up in Dubai, and I think my love for film kind of it preceded my love for music. I grew up playing guitar. Like I had some lessons. Took classical guitar lessons for 8 years. So music was very, other than just loving to sing when I was a kid, music felt very rigorous to me at first. And then, going through awkward middle school years, I had, instead of worrying about trying to make friends with acne problems, I just I landed on film instead and got into a cycle where I became obsessed with the Oscars. There was like an Academy Awards documentary that covered the top 5 awards for every year from like 1970 till 2000. And because of that doc, for some reason I just was absorbed by it, and I watched every single one of those films, even the ones that were nominated for Best Picture. And I started wanting to make my own movies. So when I was 12, we had a pretty decent home camera that was tape, very small tape camera. And I had a friend who lived in Dubai who was kind of my only friend. His name was Alex. And he was my actor. He was my, so we would go around, I'd come up with these stories. And the films ended up being an hour long. I mean, they were terrible, but there were some cool shots. There were things that I thought were cool. I had a little tripod, and I remember going to Virgin and Megastore, the CD shop, and buying the soundtracks. I bought About Schmidt, the Alexander Payne film soundtrack, and I used that for the comedies that I did, that Rolf Kent score. And then I got a couple of horror soundtracks. And then I was able to just throw those in on Windows Movie Maker, and I was like, wow, the film feels professional now because I have professional music. So I think my storytelling and stuff began there, but when I was 13, I discovered Simon and Garfunkel, and that almost kind of just made filmmaking, it just put it to sleep. It put it to sleep.
Simon Garfunkel just came in swinging.
Paul Simon came in and it took it over for me, and I think it redefined how I wanted to express myself for the next 15 years-ish. even though I'd made about 7 movies that were about, including, and I would get my dad to act. He was often a drug dealer in the film. Even though I'd made 7 hour-long strange films set in the Middle East about drug dealers in Dubai, I was now into writing. So I started writing my own songs, and when I went to high school in Monterey, there was a really great band room. So when I was there, I just learned how to play drums and piano.
Where, high school?
In Monterey Bay, California. So I moved.
Okay.
I moved there for high school.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I moved there, and there was a band room there with not many people used after school. So we had a drum set, we had 2 grand pianos in there, and we had a small little recording room, like with Logic. So I just familiarized myself with it as a one-man thing. I didn't really have anyone to jam with. I had a friend called Byron, who's still a friend, who was a great guitar player, amazing. So we would sort of blues out together. But I learned how to play simple drum beats, and I taught myself piano and started arranging stuff on a Tascam. I remember someone in my dorm gave me a Tascam, so I went down there and I remember putting together songs. So from when I was 14 to 18, I started falling in love with music production and got obsessed with Brian Wilson's productions, from the Beach Boys, Bruce Springsteen's songwriting, and then Paul McCartney's just wings and solo career, as well as the Beatles. And those were my big idols at the time. And then, when it came to applying for college, I knew that, okay, I wanted to do music production and music business. And this was sort of the path I wanted to take. I just made an album when I was 16. It was like a singer-songwriter folk album, and I'd arranged it and recorded it here in London at Metropolis Studios in Chiswick.
Okay.
I went in, and the manager there decided she might want to manage me, so I thought okay, this is going to be my entryway into the music world, very naively. But hey, it's beautiful when you're excited about things, and I was excited about it, So then I went into college at NYU to study music production at Clive Davis. And from there, I just got into a whole range of genres that I was pretty closed off to growing up, like dance music and electronic music and punk and things, and power pop and Brit pop and new wave and things that I just, I think the internet would have eventually introduced me to, but it was right before taste engine marketing really became disgustingly prevalent. So I was able to actually have these unique entry points to these genres, which I think I've romanticized now to a degree, in which I'm worried about, how we romanticize how we're introduced to things these days. It's hard to romanticize a robot giving you something.
Yeah, just a screen and I got this new music. That's a great way of putting it,
And then just to wrap it up, so I started my band there, and then in very recent years, I got back into making music videos for myself and for others. So it's kind of been a return to that a little bit. So yeah, it's a long answer, Greg, and whoever's listening, I apologize. I'm not as, I hope you don't think I'm a narcissist, whoever's listening.
No, that's great. No, this is really about kind of who we're speaking to, and just the idea of learning a little bit about. I just think there's such value in a lot of the filmmakers here in London and a lot of the musicians and artists here in London, and I think that an audience is absolutely kind of interested in these things. So okay, that's great. I think we have such a nice kind of snapshot of what's brought you to now. And we've kind of glossed over it. We've spoken a little bit about what you're up to, but could you talk a little bit about kind of currently, and maybe even just you recently moved from New York to London, and maybe just talk a little bit, we were just discussing off the pod just some of the difficulties with London. There's some nice things about London, but maybe you can just talk, kind of give us a present, what's happening, what you're up to, what the job at Banquet Records is like. Just talk about current music you're working on. I know you have a new drummer, or you're rehearsing with new drummers for potentially Glassio stuff or Tabasi stuff. So let's talk about it.
So yeah, in 2000, I was in New York for 15 years. So 2011 to 2024. So until very recently. And most of my time in New York outside of college, once I graduated, was spent on my indie electronic pop project called Glassio. And that was that was a big part of my time there and my identity there, I think. But I think it was the longest I'd lived anywhere. From my previous answer, I miss you. You know, I moved a lot as I demonstrated. So it was the longest I'd lived anywhere, and I wanted to sort of decide, okay, I don't want to just stay here for the purpose of trying to reclaim like stability by not moving, because that was a big part of why I wanted to stay there for as long as I did. I wanted to not move around as much as I had. But something just felt like I needed to change things up a little bit. It got a little too comfortable there.
That's how I felt definitely as well. You know, like leaving New York and going back to Boston kind of before COVID and everything like that definitely helped me reset and coming here.
I mean, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not doing anything, you know? So that's the David Bowie ethos. So I came here, and my family lives in the suburbs of Southwest London. So I moved out to that area. I have a studio set up. It's minor. Most of my stuff is in storage in New York, because I think I do see myself going back. I put it in a storage space in Long Island, and I have a small studio set up here. I am working. I have an agent here in Europe for my band, so he books me in Europe, Spain, Portugal, all over the place. So it made sense to be back here and try to do more shows. And, you know, I'm looking for new players. I've come across a few great drummers. You know, I'm doing a show next month in Spain, in Madrid, opening for Nada Surf.
Yeah. Who you've opened for? You've worked with them in the past.
I opened up for them a year ago. We have the same agent, so
cool.
And they're great guys. I love their music. They have a new great album out called Moon Mirror. It's really good. And Matthew, the singer, is a sweet guy. I'm really honored to open for them next month. So what my plan is, like, I had a couple of releases. I have like a remix coming out tomorrow. I have a cover I'm doing next month. But then I think I'm going to be just going into hermit mode. And I'm going to just be working on, I think, what's going to be a third album. I think it might be like 7 songs. I don't think it's going to be a long one. The last one was 17. So I want to put out a really good 7-song record, and that's going to be my goal next year for Glassio. And then in the midst of that, keep making ambient music, keep scoring films for people, continue doing some music video stuff under Sam Tabasi. Like, that's the goal. I mean, yeah, and like, you're just taking things as they come. I'm actively surrendering to this shift.
Yeah, it's great.
I think surrendering can feel like a retreat, but I like to think of like the process of surrender as like, okay, this is a decision I'm making.
Yeah.
I'm actively doing it. I can either choose to fight the change that should happen or just succumb to it. And I think it's really powerful to just succumb to it.
Yep. It's part of the renewal process. I think you can't, unless you till up old ground.
Yeah.
Well, how are you going to get new fruits? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like you really, that's part of it. And that's, I guess, I don't know what part of that is the surrender process. I think it's, realizing that the old ground needs.
It's interesting. I think about it a lot. You know, Brian Eno, who I love, talks about this act of surrendering, right? In work and in music. And it's so true when you think about like how technology now has advanced to a point in which there are no limitations at all, especially as a musician. And I'm interested to know your take on this when it comes to film.
Yeah.
But when the medium is digitalized to the point in which you can spend however many hours you want making a story, the work ends up being quite subtractive, because you have so much footage, or you have so much recording, or you have so many synthesizers you've layered on into the production that you kind of do, I talk to musicians about this, but when you have the ability to just loop a 10-second part of a song in a studio that you live in, you can literally add things to that till the cows come home. Yeah. So the process ends up being subtractive. You start removing things. And it's like, okay, that never used to be the way. We used to have financial budgets. It was expensive to record. It was expensive to make movies, or far more expensive than maybe it is now. So we used to have to be sparse with what we added. We needed to go in with a map. We needed to add the things that were necessary. And then if we had the time, we would add in little extra stuff. But now we add all the extra stuff and then we find out what's necessary in reverse.
Yep.
And it's almost like that is a form, like listening to a recording today. Like I think a recording, like a musician's recording today is a reflection of not how much they were able to control, but how much they were able to surrender and how much they were able to say, that's it. That's the end of the like when I listen to someone's recording now, I'm like, that's when they said, okay, it's done. Because that's the hardest question to ask yourself. When is it done?
I feel like that's kind of why, like in music, it's very different in music. I can't really like speak up against it just in relation to film, but I think the trick with music is you're right. It's just, I think that almost like a good producer there, or a good person over the shoulder, or just to pass it off to when it comes to music, because I do feel like you could sit there and just kind of have everything at your fingertips. With filmmaking, it's like you take it, it's just, there's more added pieces with the video and audio element. So you could go crazy with the soundtrack and the sound design and all that stuff. And you could do basically what you're saying, because it's kind of like making a song, I guess, when you're talking about sound design and all these different things. But yeah, with film, I mean, you know me, like with working on film, doing different faces on 35 and swimming, that's a way to cut out some of that digital madness that you run into. I only got 4 rolls of film. I only got 10 rolls of film. I only got 15 rolls of film. So you tell me, like, and that's I love that. Like, that gets the whole crew before they even step on set just to feel like, listen, this is it, man. Like, we're not gonna do 20 extra takes here. And it comes back and gets you because, like, Different Faces is a perfect example where we only got one take of that fight scene, and Brendan's looking at me like, damn, I did 110% on this one. I wanted to take it down a little bit, and I'm sorry, man. And if everyone isn't used to working on film, and generally when you're younger, that's less apparent because it's a lot of digital has totally taken over.
Right.
It's just I totally get what you mean. This idea of when to surrender, when to say stop, and I think you have to just. That's the key. I feel like that's always been the key, though. All goes back to the analog and digital. I think it's all
totally
swirls.
that.
It swirls around that, and I'll say, just for me, like shooting on film and shooting digitally, shooting with files, it's 2 separate things.
Yeah.
It's you can say it's filmmaking, you can say it's great, and that it's all the same, but. And again, like with shooting on film, that all goes digital anyways, and you end up doing your scores digitally and all this stuff. But I think there's a huge difference between the analog thing. But it's very different with music, because music, I know now, has even more become a digital assignment. You can be recording on tape. It's still doable.
I'll tell you where I think it's similar. Like, I think, and when you work on something in digital film world, you have this. If you're not working on film, right, and if you're shooting just digital, there's a voice that you allow a bit that says, we'll fix it in post.
Yep.
Which is a dangerous voice. And I think it's a dangerous voice. But like, let's say you're working on a song with someone and you get together and they're a massive egomaniac and they don't want to do more than 3 vocal takes because they have to go to like a Spotify event. So they'll like take the 3 takes and you'll be like, oh, I'll fix it in post. I'll tune it. I'll melodyne the vocal. It doesn't matter if the performance wasn't there. I'll be able to fix things and edit things and comp things. And you might get something that works, but like, that's what I'm like, the recording isn't really, it's not like it used to be, it's not like the stakes aren't as high. So I always try to like maintain my commitment to like making sure the performance is good, or when I have worked with other artists, I try to maintain that. But like, you go back and you listen to records in the 70s and it's a recording in time. It's the way it's the sound of these people getting together in a room or having practiced and arranged. And I'm not saying that's not the case today. There are definitely bands that still do that, but like you're listening to a recording of these controlled parameters that people got together and figured out and tuned up for. And now when you listen to a recording, it's almost like you're listening to how someone decided to declare where the finish line was. It's that's what the recording is. It's a reflection of the artist's ability to assess when the project was finished. It's like a reversal of, I think, what it used to be. So, especially with electronic music now, the new Jamie XX album just being on my mind. He could have. I don't know exactly how he works, but I know as someone who makes electronic music that, when you get together with someone and you're in a room and you've got it on a loop, you can tend to stack things because you get excited by the beat and you get excited by what you're building. And then you realize, wow, it's too much of a wall of sound. It's way too maximalist. Yeah. Let's see what we don't need here, So then it's almost like when I listen to my final product, I'm listening to a reflection of where I was able to be decisive on what I didn't need. I don't know if that makes sense.
It's fun with trends, man. That's as the technology shifts over decades. Yeah. And that's what differentiates 60s sounding records from something from the 80s, is specific instruments that were introduced. And now we're just, maximalist, I think it's been something that's prevailing, past 20, 30 years, something like that. But I think, what you're saying is how things will shift, hopefully there's, I don't know. For me, I've always been an ambient guy. You know what I mean? I've always been someone who to relax and kind of get your mind off film or whatever script you're working on. Throw on some Aphex Twin. Yeah. Throw on some Niels Fram.
Did you hear the new reissue of Selected Works?
I was trying to go to Rough Trade because they were going to do a listening session because I'd love to listen to this with other people.
Well, we had a listening party at Banquet. Oh, it was such a party, man.
Was it cool?
No, I mean that it was cool, but I mean that in the sense that how ominous that music is.
No, that one is specifically dark.
Yeah, you pull people in and you're like, welcome to the Aphex Twin listening party, and you're listening to sounds that sound. The album is perfect for when you get a blood test done and you're waiting for your results. That is.
I was listening to it. I was like, this is a specific because the first ambient album that's a little bit more playful and kind of there's a range, but the second one is pretty dark.
No, I was listening to it in the shop and I was like, wow, I'm a hypochondriac in a car parked outside the hospital. The rain is tattering on my window and I'm waiting for my blood test results.
That's it.
And I know I'm okay, but I'm still worried. And that album is perfect. It's really for that.
It's weird because it's not I wouldn't call it necessarily anxiety inducing, but there's something quite grim and dark about the whole thing.
So it was just weird to see people congregate and have conversations while this was playing. And a lot of them were young kids, 12-year-olds. And I was like, yeah, your dad got, and they're like, yeah, my dad got me an Aphex Twin.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'm like, wow, welcome to the new generation. That's what we've done to the world. They're already obsessed with this dark, ominous ambient music. But I'm also an ambient guy. I love ambient music, and it's frankly, I don't listen to podcasts because
me neither. There's one or two. I'd say a big inspiration for this one is Roger Deakins and James Deakins' podcast because that was a big film school introduction for me through COVID. Is listening to famous cinematographer talk with production designers and sound recordists and just everyone in between while I'm working at Target, throwing things into the pillow section at 5 a.m, while COVID is just wreaking havoc on the world outside.
I have a little thought that just sort of popped up. We're talking about how musicians, where we're at today with the technology, right? How do people consume art? Most of the time it's through Apple speakers on the phone or on the laptop. And I had this sort of theory that I think musicians are almost sort of making music to sound that fits the frequency spectrum and bandwidth of those speakers on laptops. Yeah. The types of drum choices cut through a bit more. Reverbs are a little more tame. Yeah. They're not as heavy in the lower mids because that region is just sort of it isn't represented well on Mac speakers. So it's almost like things are crafted in the mix to always fit the speakers of the day, of the zeitgeist. It's interesting because shorts don't usually get major cinema spotlights, but people watch shorts all the time. I think most of the time, correct me wrong, on even just on their phones. Have you felt like wouldn't it make sense to think that even cinematography or composition would shift so that framing wouldn't be super complex and that it would be simple and big and vast, so that as you're watching things on your phone,
it makes sense and it's not complicated.
It's almost just visually palatable.
Yeah.
On a smaller scale.
Yeah. It's very good. Very good way of saying it.
I've always been conscious of that potential trend, like trope. I haven't necessarily seen it or picked up on it, but if musicians are making music to fit Apple speakers, how
does that translate in film?
Yeah. How does that translate with filmmakers making shorts to look good on small screens?
Well, there's the vertical dramas that are huge now. Like a lot of friends from school are all kind of making them all over, like different production companies, and that's one thing. So you're holding the phone vertically and watching whatever kind of. It's I would call it like a soap opera kind of dramatic kind of feeling behind it. But so that's one thing, and that's a totally kind of redefines, right? Flipping the camera 180, like really, it's a lot more kind of focused on the person, what they're wearing, what they're saying. Any type of wide shots are a lot more complicated as far as like how you're gonna fit things in. But I would say even shooting horizontally. I think kind of a simplicity is nice. But it's been I feel like phone, like the phone, kind of watching something on your phone's been around forever, and you see people on the tube all the time watching different Netflix series or whatever. I think there is something nice about. I mean, that's for me. I mean, with swimming in different faces, just keep the complexity away and just focus on telling that story, tried and true from beginning to end. I don't think I'm not necessarily thinking like, a lot of people. I think for me, shorts, bottom line, is a place to train as a director, as a writer, as a cinematographer. The expectation, submit it to festivals, that's fine, but I'm not expecting the shorts to get lots and lots of views. If that makes any sense. It's all about getting features out there. I think for me it's and so I think that naturally comes to frame simply, to show people a style in a kind of a bigger picture kind of way, and then you can add things onto it. I think kind of what we've been talking about is as opposed to subtracting. Try and go the old school way a little bit, the analog way a little bit, and build in that way. So, but I always think it's gonna be simple. I think Aki Kaurismäki, Finnish director, is really a big touchdown for me, and Jim Jarmusch is like kind of like the like just did it the right way independently. Films like Mystery Train and Down by Law, like I just really like that. I think Scorsese and Paul Thomas Anderson, of course, is like a huge touchstone as well. But and I'd say that he does have a simplicity in some aspects of the way he's like constructing a story. But even Scorsese, to me, I think he's obviously one of the greats, but isn't necessarily. And I've watched. You watch everything as a kid, so you know it like the back of your hand. But I wouldn't say it's when I'm thinking about making currently. I'd go more with kind of that independent, lower budget route, because I see that much better. Scorsese seems like forever he's been making high budget films.
Sure, yeah.
It feels a little more out of touch. But when I watch the Jim Jarmusch stuff, when I watch the kind of European art cinema stuff, it seems like a lot of it was done with less.
Yeah,
and I like that.
Yeah, I mean your films have like that, like there's a tonality that almost makes me think of like some Wim Wenders stuff as well.
No, it's a great example. Really, Perfect Day is I think I've heard varying results with varying kind of interest in Perfect Day, his most recent film. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I think what I liked about that film is it told you needed to slow down in a world that is very sped up and fast paced. And I think something very interesting to do, I think just the ambience of that film, and you're sitting in the theater and you're thinking, I mean, I don't want to say this, but you kind of ask yourself, like, I don't know. I go to movies all the time, and I ask myself this question halfway through the film: why am I watching this? Why am I watching this? What am I doing with my life in this dark room watching this? And when I asked myself that question in that film, it was very clear to me that I almost need this, because I need an escape from the stress that was circling and swimming in my head. The world is louder and faster than it's ever felt. We live in a very, very instant world. And I think we're focused on ourselves and our footprint, our digital footprint, making an impact, and to see someone make an impact in a very different way and on a different side of the world with almost, a very peaceful openness to life.
Well, that Japanese tranquility,
yet harboring pain. Yeah. He was harboring some pain, that character. But the way in which you discovered that was very raw and real. I love movies that do that. And I think, I loved that film. I really love how Wim Wenders does that in general. And I think, that's that film is almost like a functional necessity.
Yeah.
To pause and reflect on how you harbor pain in a world and how your life could be if you were to just slow down. I kind of wanted to go back to something you talked about with vertical storytelling.
Yeah.
Because I know you've kind of worked in that world quite recently. And my impression of it, as I've sort of thought about it, is it's a good thing and a bad thing. I feel like there's one thing that I can think of being bad potentially, is that it must be a little harder to make things that feel like they're not just about one person. I think like the vertical format very much sinks in with a one person moment in which someone is telling their story or their experience, or just, it's about their trajectory, their journey. So how does it become conversational? How does it become about more than just one person? Literally framing wise, like how do you squeeze people into that frame? But the other thing that I do think is cool about it is, there's that famous meeting that John Ford had with Steven Spielberg, where he said, you see the horizon there in that photo. If the horizon's at the top, it's good.
Yeah.
Or if it's at the bottom, it's good. If it's in the middle, it's a boring story. I feel like vertical format is very good for how you can experiment with where your horizon sits.
Yeah, it's great.
And placement, and maybe that's a big that's something that you have to even be more aware of now. But I'm just curious, how do you think vertical storytelling impacts the types of stories?
So the two I directed, I really enjoyed the experience. There were things after, on these lower budget kind of adventures, can be tricky, but vertical was fun because it was different, right? You're just completely changing, and you need that as someone making films, is something different. Give me something different, and then as far as individual, so I think it also was fun for just doing more long format stuff, which I've done less of. Just having done so many shorts recently, and you got to get out of that. You got to snap out of that quick, because features are where the money's going to be, and shorts less so. So you got to get there regardless. So this was a great little kind of stepping stone out of that. And then in regards to, I could totally get what you mean, kind of keeping it only on one person. Funny thing is the way that school was teaching you, and the way I believe just in general is, a film there should be a central protagonist, one person, you know what I mean? One person telling their story. So that's kind of part of my job, is to read the script and go, whose story is this? Even if the script is complicated, like if I'm getting whatever script from, I don't know who the writer is, whatever, they're throwing at me, they're saying you got 2 days to prepare, you can meet the actors on one day for rehearsals on Zoom, and then we'll see you on the first day, and we're going to do 6 days of this, So for me, it's like I have to read the script, and I have to go, whose story is it? And if it's a little complicated for me, as opposed to rewriting at that stage where we were, go with it. You know what I mean? Take the script, think about what the writer was thinking. And if the writer wasn't thinking, I got to pick it up somehow and shape it make it work. And even if there's convoluted stories that shoot off in different directions, people getting arrested, people getting divorced, people getting back together, people cheating on each other, people dying, whatever this kind of soap opera kind of mentality is, have fun with it. Just have fun with it, man.
Yeah.
Just get the information. Work with the actors, because actors are first, man. They're the ones in front of the camera. They're the ones that are embodying the people. So you're just behind going, I'm the first audience. Yeah, that was good. You know what I mean? And that was bad. And then you shape it from there. Oh, that was not working. That accent's really bad. Or, whatever it is that's really taken me out of it. You get the actor, and the actor, if they're good, they're going to listen to you, man. They're going to listen to you, because the cinematographer's worried about the lighting and worried about camera placement and worried about all these things, communicating with the ACs, communicating with the gaffer to get everything right. The director's the guy that's there, or he or she is the one that's guiding that performance and guiding this kind of long story to its conclusion.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, you have to look and you have to say, whose story is this? Because it is somebody's story, and that can be done in a couple different ways. You can look at the ending, and you can look at I think that's how I have to simplify it, is like, at the end of the story, and I think it's a good thing. That's a fun thing for me, is like in identifying what type of story is it. If I'm getting a script that I don't that can be confusing. Is it a comedy? What is the final scene about? Is it a tragedy?
Yeah.
Is everyone die?
Yeah.
It's a tragedy. Is it and so a comedy would be, if there's like a romantic ending or anything like that. Comedy, tragedy. You tell me that, and then so once I have that, if it's a comedy or a tragedy, then I can start. That's like my first step towards understanding who the story is about.
Yeah.
And then like it really comes down to like the last one I did is a good example. Whispers of Retribution, where it's like it's a guy and girl who meet at a cemetery. It's a ridiculous story. Who meet at a cemetery because their lovers were in a car crash and died and were cheating on them, and they meet at the cemetery and are like, and that's how they meet.
That's cool.
And then they're like, oh yeah, here, have a drink. And then they have a drink, and then like all of a sudden they're on this really wild and crazy escapade, and there's all this intrigue. There's all this kind of high drama of like, there's Brian, the bad guy, is trying to take her away from the protagonist, and he's like this menacing kind of creepy guy, and he's drugging the drink, and there's this big scene at the end where he's trying to fix the drink, and then she hits him in the head with like something, and the cops come in, and then Gary comes in and saves her.
So it was doomed from the start.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's totally no. At the end of the film, oh God, what happens? Yeah, they walk off into the sunset. They have a nice kiss, and they overcome this whole entire kind of insane intrigue of he owns a restaurant. The restaurant sabotage. Brian's this bad guy. He's after. They have this whole flashback to the lovers in the with blood in the car with the glass.
And that was all vertically.
That's a whole vertical. But that's what's fun with it is at that stage it was like, let me get the most ridiculous story, and as opposed to chopping it down and making it this kind of like little shell of itself, keep that crazy life in it, and just like and unfortunately it's like you kind of hear these things kind of go away, and you never know what happened. That kind of rips your heart out as a director, because you can't really see how it was. You weren't able to shepherd it all the way into its final phase, but it's so great because that's all a feature is, and that's all you need to make something really interesting that people would want to see. If you flip that all horizontally and directed it in an intriguing way, that's a fucking best film that they've seen.
For now. I mean, who knows? I think maybe there'll be more vertical cinemas in the future. Who knows?
I don't know.
I don't know if it ever turns into that, but I think for me, I feel claustrophobic when I see anything narrative based on a vertical video, but I think that can be a cool thing if the purpose of the script is to make you feel claustrophobic. I think, if you have a story that's about someone feeling trapped, if you have a story about someone that's trying to break away from a situation or a neighborhood or a place in their life, and you tell it vertically, I think you already have an upper hand, because you're giving. I don't think I'm the only one that maybe feels this way. I can't imagine, we're used to seeing stories told, long-form stories told in landscape format. So I think it's actually kind of an interesting technique to explore.
Absolutely. Listen, if you ever come up with an idea, we can maybe write something and send it to one of these producers who's making these, because there's so many of them happening right now. It's like a big trend. So
I
why not get a script across? Because I don't know where these scripts are coming from anyways, and there's probably a lot of really cool ideas, and might as well, whether this is just a flash in the pan or whatever it is, why not make something of it and make something that's really interesting? It's totally possible.
I think like shots of like overhead shots that sort of dolly upwards, so that you're like almost feeling like you can see the street move.
We could make it and we could sell it to one of these companies.
I think we should do it, man.
Trust me. Figuring out the budget.
I've met a lot of people in my life who feel trapped and are ready to burst. So I could source some ideas from some of the fine folks I've crossed paths with.
Well, this is what the podcast is all about, is trying to generate some of these ideas and maybe collaborations. So,
no, absolutely. You know what's amazing, Greg, is that I haven't cursed once on this podcast yet.
I did a little. I think I dropped an F-bomb.
Did you drop an F-bomb? Yeah. This is really, I'm proud of myself.
But,
I'm really,
but I think I'm proud of you too.
Thank you.
So I want to wrap this up. We've gone a little over, which is totally fine because it's all been really interesting stuff. But I just want to make sure that we keep this kind of palatable for our crowd, and we're going to have more and more of these. This is just the beginning of a lot of great conversations. Groups. I've got 4 inputs here, so we can really have a lot of like really interesting conversations in the round. We can bring different people in. We can have. This is great.
You could play poker at this table and and do the podcast at the same time.
I'm telling you, it's just the beginning. There's so many interesting things that are happening, and hopefully we get some nice sponsors involved, which will really be great. But let's end it with what's coming up for you, or what's in the future. What's kind of we've talked about it a little bit. You talked about the music you're working on, but maybe you just have one project that you're really excited about. You talked about that upcoming record.
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to be yet, but there's a couple of songs that I think for sure will go on it. I just have to reimagine them. I think I'm just trying to make something sound a little bit different from the last 2 albums, and it feels like I need to recreate the color, like the palette that I'm using. I need a source from a different palette, like just different colors, different textures, and different sounds. So I like the songs are there, but it's just how I'm imagining, like how I'm realizing them, that I'm not incredibly excited about, because they can be realized in infinite ways, right? So that's where I'm at. I mean, I'm also like, as I'm here in London, I'm trying to meet more people. I'm trying to meet more musicians. I'd like to make more music videos for people. I'd like to continue scoring for people. I love doing that. It's becoming something that I feel like is just starting to feel more and more natural to me. So just seeing where those roads take me, and just being open to it all. Frankly, I'm in I feel like I've just weirdly feel the way I did when I first started school in New York.
Yeah. That's a good way to describe it.
I feel that way again.
Well, to all the people out there, make sure to check out Glassio on Spotify. Make sure to check out Sam Tabasi on Spotify. Make sure to check out the Swimming soundtrack on Spotify. The composition for my short film, Swimming, is on Spotify. Please check it out. It would be great to get the Different Faces soundtrack on there. Maybe we could talk about that. So maybe that would be incoming at some point. Unfortunately, I don't know if you'll be able to make the screening on Friday, but there's going to be a great screening on Friday. But we'll do another one in December, so hopefully we can have you there.
I wish I could jetpack to Covent Garden from Kingston. If you know anyone with a jetpack, I'll do it. But I will try.
We can talk about it. We can make it happen.
Yeah.
So once again, Sam, thank you so much for being on the London United Filmmaker Podcast. I'm sure to have you on
Greg.
again soon. And thank you so much.
Thanks, my friend. I don't know why I'm getting raspy there at the end, but thank you for having me.
You are welcome.